welcome to the Valley. Today, I am your host, Janet Michael. It is Luray Page Day, so we are back on the Zoom with Gina Hilliard. She is president at Luray Page Chamber of Commerce. Her guest today is Rich Hostelley. He is an architect, so we're going to learn a little bit about what that is and the kinds of services that he performs for our community. So, Gina, good choice and a guest today. I'm a huge Seinfeld fan, and George Costanza always wanted to be an architect. So this is going to be a fun conversation, I think. So, Rich, tell me a little bit about you. How did you have an interest in becoming an architect? Give me a little history. Give me a little background.
Sure. I got out of the military and I was looking for something to do. And I happened to go to work for a lumber company in the Gainesville area and started getting a drafting background. And I decided to go to college for construction administration, construction management. And it was during that time that I had a professor who thought I had a pretty good eye for design. And he led me to change my major to architecture. And since then, I graduated with a bachelor's of architecture, which is basically, I'm not going to say it's a master's degree, but it's the equivalent. It's a professional degree that's required to become a licensed architect. What happens is we have to go through a process. So it's schooling, it's experience, and an examination. I've been a licensed architect since 2007. I've been in the field for almost 40 years. I am licensed throughout multiple jurisdictions. I practice out of my parents' farm in Stanley, but I also practice in California. My wife and I have a place in California. And recently, within the past 2 years, I started practicing in the United Kingdom. So I am a registered architect in England, Scotland, as well as Wales. And I work with an architect over there in Scotland, and we do work throughout Europe. And my next goal is to become a licensed architect in mainland Europe with the thought of actually moving there at some point, but not right now. So I'm here in Stanley right now at this moment, and I provide guidance with everything from outhouses to bioscience centers. My
That's a
portfolio is
wide, that's a wide swath right there.
yeah, I'm lucky to have a diversity in portfolio projects and what I've worked on, mostly due to the people I've worked with throughout the years. I've worked at firms with sole proprietors, small firms of, let's say, upwards of 10 people. And when I moved to California, well over 16 years ago, I went to a firm that I managed close to 1,800 people throughout the world. We had architects in Beijing, Shanghai, as well as Mumbai, India, and South Africa. So I have a wide background. I enjoy everything from residential to commercial work. So it's fun.
What sort of situations would require someone to need an architect? It's very different, I assume, than what we may see on like HGTV, for example, when somebody is renovating their house. An architect isn't always needed in those cases. What kinds of situations would they need to reach out to an architect for?
Well, a lot of people don't understand what an architect does. They think that we draw pretty pictures. I do. I make nice animations and create beautiful boards, but that's only 2% of our profession. The rest of it is understanding management, understanding budgets, understanding the goal, and the relationship of those around us. It just isn't about the client. It is actually about the jurisdiction that you're dealing with. It's about codes, understanding the world market when it comes to buying plywood, buying PVC, buying furniture. So we're here to act as guidance. The commercial world needs architects. We are the top of the pyramid, so to say. And I'm not saying that as an egotist. That's just how it works. A client will come to us and hire us, and we will hire the team. That boils down to the building component teams, such as mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and structural engineers, even the civil engineers and environmental protection. And there's just a large gamut that we are in charge of. When it comes to residential, you don't necessarily need to have an architect work with you. Now, there are certain parameters. If you have a townhouse, if you have a condominium, if you have a building that's over 4 stories, you legally have to have an architect involved. But people do come to us. They need our guidance to understand design. I was a designer before I was an architect. I worked on close to 400 homes. I worked for Pulte and long signature homes, but I also worked for commercial architects. So I have that experience and that background. The difference between a designer and an architect is I am a legal architect. It is a requirement to have a background, such as the educational base as well as the licensing. So there comes with that liability, insurance, and whatever else. But it's experience. You're dealing with someone that has experience. And we don't necessarily know your project until we walk into it and we start looking around. I do not have to be on site. I work remote. I started working remote almost 20 years ago with my mentor, who has since retired. He moved down to Florida with his wife, and we worked with clients throughout the United States remotely. I work with another architect in Tel Aviv, Israel. We do projects in South Africa. I've never met him. I probably will never meet him in person. I hate to say it that way, but we just probably won't have our paths cross. But we talk constantly the way we're talking right now. We also text quite a bit, and of course through emails. So an architect is here to guide you. We give you our experience, our knowledge base. We give you ideas, creative ideas, and you may just have a box. I recently had a proposed client in Luray that wanted to do a pool house, but the pool house was a little bit more in scope than just making a nice little place with a bar and a restroom. It entailed other things invested. So with my guidance and with other people's guidance, we try to direct them in the right way on how to approach the project. For me, fundamentally, though, it's how is the project going to be used? What's the context of the project? But most importantly, what is their budget? Residential clients are probably the hardest I work with because they don't have a real relationship of understanding the values that they have in front of us. Commercial projects, you're dealing with builders, you're dealing with developers. They know it. They understand the world market. They understand the regional markets. They're able to work with inside the constraints. Theirs is more or less, let's get this built faster so I can get my return on investment. A residential project, though, it's going to take some time, and it's part of your heart, right? You're living and breathing this. You want this to be your forever home, or maybe to bring a parent in, or maybe it's just as simple as building a garage because you collect cars and you want to be able to work on the cars. We try to guide you through this. And with residential work, I try to have a contractor engaged as quickly as possible. They're going to be able to help me help my client understand the values that we're proposing for materials, the overall building itself. I can do an analysis. I usually do, whether it's residential or commercial. I spend quite a few hours and come up with a budget analysis, and then also a phasing analysis. So that's another way that you can use architects, besides drawing the pretty pictures, besides going through a permit process, which is required by every jurisdiction in the United States and its territories, as well as most developed countries require permits. I just got back from Mexico. I worked on a friend's of mine restaurant that has a seating capacity of well over 800 people. And we're adding a sidebar. We have to go through a permit process in Mexico. So everywhere that you go, it's for safety, it's for life safety, to make sure that it's able to withstand hurricane, gale force winds, or snow loads, earthquake loads, as well as get you out in case there's a fire. So that's why we're here. We're here to guide you through the process of understanding construction, the technologies of construction, the budget of construction, and then finally getting you into whatever it is that you propose. So that's what we're here for.
So many times I think from a residential standpoint, people think the job is much easier than it is. And then I think from a commercial standpoint, sometimes we think the red tape isn't going to be as bad as it is. So you get it from both sides.
You do. I find that most of the residential projects that I've worked on throughout my experience become very difficult when it comes to the understanding of the process. Commercial projects, the owner, contractor already knows what's behind it. They have the expectation that there are going to be delays, that there's going to be cost overruns, that they're going to have to deal with the jurisdictional items that come up. The residential projects, they have no clue of that. So there's a shock factor at time, and there's a step back. They have to sometimes take a deep breath and step back to move forward. But during that whole process, a designer, an architect, an interior designer, an engineer, We're just trying to help them. We're trying to help them through the process that again, that as a residential project, they don't understand. Maybe they do. Maybe they've done their own construction. Maybe they are a developer. Maybe they are in the trades or permitting, etc. They have some knowledge base. But when it comes to their home, they don't constantly work on it. They might paint it. They might put in new furniture, things like that, but they're not constantly tearing it apart. Whereas I am. I'm working on a stable right now in California that it's approximately a 25,000 square foot stable that we've gone through a design process for 6 months. We're constantly refining it to get it to what the client needs and what they want and how they want to approach this. And I'm also working on a guest house in Washington, D.C. That's a very small, it's a 200 square foot guest house located in a small parcel of a row house. It's a shed, but they still want this guest house. How do you work? How do you put a bathroom in there? How do you put a kitchenette? How do you put a bed in there? It becomes very difficult. I can figure those things out for them, or somebody else can. So that's why we're here. We're here for guidance, and we're here to develop the dream into reality, so to say. I like to interject some of my own thought processes into it. I have a certain signature that I put into it. I love mid-century architecture. I also love mission architecture and very modern architecture. So I listen to the clients and try to get a feel for them, feel what is it you like? And then if they are on board with those, I add those elements. At the end of the day, it's not about me, it's about them.
So let me just tell you one of my beefs, and you can tell me if this is an actual beef or not.
Mhm.
I am a House Hunters addict. I cannot go to sleep at night unless I watch House Hunters before I go to bed. The number of people that, and of course, they're always on opposite ends. The wife wants this, the husband wants that. Almost always, one of them wants a craftsman style house. And they roll up to these houses and they're like, oh, it's my craftsman style. And I'm looking at it going, that is not at all a craftsman style
Mhm.
house. What people think they know and what they do know, that's a
Right.
big gap sometimes, I would guess, especially for you.
I love craftsman. Quite a few projects of mine are craftsman style. But what is a craftsman? Do we want to go a Boston, New York craftsman, or do we want to do a California craftsman? Do we want to do a Seattle craftsman? Do we want to do a mid-century craftsman? So it becomes a fine line of what's the definition that you're going for. And is it a modern? Does it just have the feel of it? Just having a tapered column, it becomes craftsman, right? Having a low slung roof that has a pediment above it. What is it that makes it a craftsman? I deal with a lot of projects in California, residential projects that are true craftsmen that were built by green and green architects. There are two brothers that moved from Boston to LA, and then they ended up in Seattle as well. That between 1903 and 1925, they defined what a true craftsman is. It becomes, well, what is it today? It's the same thing with Mediterranean. I have a client that wants a Mediterranean home, and I'm like, well, you're in Michigan.
And that's the
Because,
other thing I see a lot is people will ask for this house that just isn't where they want to live. And they're like,
yeah,
yeah, I want a Mediterranean house in Michigan. I want the roof and all. And that's just not.
yeah, okay, I'll do it. But does it really fit where you're at, the context of vernacular? But if that's what you want, okay, then do you want it to be a true Mediterranean like you're in Italy, or do you want like a Spanish Mediterranean? Do you want a French Mediterranean? What is it that what in your mind is, oh, then let's flip over to the other continent. Do you want an Egyptian? What's Mediterranean? So you have to define it because we don't have that in our minds. I do. Part of my background is I have a background in history, architectural history. I found it very interesting. It's a cultural thing. The world is formulated off of a society, and most of the societies are based around religions. I wanted to learn what made the great cathedrals of Europe, what made the Egyptian pyramids, as well as the Grecian temples. So, what is it that we're actually talking about? And most people, this is really, I'm not getting political when I say this. I travel extensively throughout the world. My wife and I just got back from 6 weeks in Europe for Christmas markets. So someone asked us, where are you guys from? And I'm a little hesitant because of the world situation that we're in now. But she says, oh, we're from America. And they're like, where in South America are you from? It keyed into it. It's, yeah, you're right. We say we're American, but Are we Canadian American? Are we Mexican? Are we Belizean? Are we Central South America? So we have to be careful in defining things because people have a certain relationship of what the word means. I hear the word America all the time. America is actually a town in England. That's where it came from. America is actually Spanish. So we have to be careful. So when we say, again, I'll go back to the idea of Mediterranean. Which Mediterranean do you want? Which craftsman do you want? Which Victorian? Now, when we start saying Victorian, we have an understanding it's either High Princess or it's Queen Anne. We understand that because that's a period that's specifically in one centralized area, which is typically England. That
Similar to
came,
mid-century modern.
yeah.
It's somewhat in a box. When you hear mid-century modern, most people have the same image in their head.
And do you know where it came from? It
No.
came from Germany.
What?
Came from Mies van der Rohe, the Bauhaus principles of the 1920s. It was a switch in how the world was understanding architecture and in industry, and it became modernism. Modernism flew into other little bits and pieces. Frank Lloyd Wright created the naturalism of the prairie house style, which is a mid-century 20 years later, 20, 30 years later, interpretation of Frank Lloyd Wright's prairie house style, which is an interpretation of Mies van der Rohe. So what is it? People say mid-century, and they take a look at these beautiful homes by Venturi out in California, or architect by the name of Venturi or Eisenman. You take a look at that and you automatically assume it's an American thing. It's not. It actually was developed in Germany.
That is
So,
cool. Yeah, but that's my dream style too. That's if I ever had to
oh
build a
yeah,
house from the ground up, that is totally the style that I would want to go with. There's
I'm,
just something about it that I love. Not
I
to mention
agree.
the fact
I
that
agree.
most of the decor in a mid-century modern is orange and the bright, happy colors. And as you can tell, I'm all in
Yeah,
for the orange.
I'm doing one in LA right now. It's a fire rebuild, so I understand.
I've joked for a couple of years now. Gina, I think we joked about this with one of your guests that was in construction last year that I have wanted for a while to put. You were talking about the 200 square foot guest house. I want a studio
Mhm.
that isn't much bigger than that to put in the backyard that I can leave the dogs and leave all of the things behind and go into the backyard and do things. I live in Frederick County, so I'm in Middletown, not far,
Mhm.
45 minutes or so outside of Page County. I kind of have an idea of what I want it to look like. I don't know, from permits and water lines and buried cables and all of those kinds of things. If I call you first, what happens? What does that process look like?
Well, there's an investigation, and some of that investigation is on me, some of it's on you as the property owner. It starts with understanding what the house or the building, such as if it's a warehouse or maybe it's a gas station, how does it seat on a piece of property? And the way to visually look at that is to have a site plan. Residential, there's what's known as a property plat or plot, PLAT or PLOT. They're both the same interchangeably, but some engineers put plats, some put plots. But it's a house location and it shows your boundaries. It shows the property boundaries with definitions that are deeded, the length, the north and south directions, etc. It shows you the sizing, how many square feet the property is. It'll show the building itself. It may show wellheads. It may show where there's a septic line. There might be an easement that goes through your property, such as a power easement. There might be a sewer easement. There might be just an easement that has nothing going through, but it's an easement for fire trucks to get in. Sometimes those are all shown on there. There might be outbuildings and whatever else. That's the first thing that we need. We need an understanding of how the building seats on the property. Now we have to find out, you want to build a nice little studio to place your shed at. Where are we going to seat it on the property now? We have property setback lines. We have front setback, rear and side setbacks that we have to deal with. Besides dealing with the easements that may come into play and a septic tank that may come into play. There are other requirements that may be there. There might be lot coverage. We're only allowed to build so many feet pad wise on the property face, not first floor, second floor, but property face, you have to take a look at that percentage. There might be height restrictions that now we're dealing with zoning that we have to go to. So it's an investigation. It's to understand, and we call it, architects call it pre-design. We're not designing anything. We need to get all of our investigation done first before we can really lay the metaphoric pen to paper. In my eyes, I use a computer, but I still use pen and paper every once in a while. So before we actually start designing, we have to know all these parameters behind it. Zoning has their own set of rules. The building department has their own set of rules, but they all come together. You find this information. If I'm doing a project in Florida, I'm going online. Today, it's very easy. 10, 15 years ago, it was not. Today, we live in an internet-based society. Go online, go to the county, and look up their building requirements. You look up the codes. We have to follow with inside codes. The residential code for Virginia, we follow the code guidance of the IRC, which is the International Residential Code. But it's also the Virginia Construction Code, or the Virginia Residential Code, takes their code factors from the IRC. If it's a commercial code, it's the International Building Code. Same thing, Virginia Construction Code. If we're dealing with Maryland, it has its own codes, et cetera. So you have to look at the jurisdiction that you're in. But you also have to look at state jurisdiction, excuse me. You also have to look at the regionals, such as Frederick compared to Page County. What are the code factors that they deal with? Because they have different ways of interpreting those codes and implementing those codes. They may say, we're still dealing with the code that was written in 2018 in Page, but Frederick might say, no, we're 2021. So we have to look at those code factors. We have to look at the parameters that are set up for zoning, such as those setbacks, those height restrictions. Certain jurisdictions that I deal with throughout the United States have not only height, but they have a hill type of setback. I've got a project in California that is on a hill that the house got burned. It's gone. We're building a new home, not in kind. We're actually building a step style modern home built out of concrete and glass and steel for fire protection, but it goes up the side of a hill. We have to follow a certain slope pattern because flames go upwards. So you have to look at all these codes. You, as my possible client, you don't know those codes. To be very upfront and transparent, I don't necessarily know those codes. I have to inform myself. So I go to the jurisdiction and I understand what they're looking through. All codes are the same. They're there for life safety and the protection of property. So I'm going through and I'm reading what code factors. Is it an international code that they're working from for the United States? I'm not even going to go with international, working internationally, how they deal with theirs, but I'm just looking at how we deal with here in the United States. So when I say international, that's our code. It's called the International Building Code. So how does it relate to the International Building Code? Most of the codes written in the United States relate to that. Now, there are some, you go down to Georgia, you go down to Southern Virginia, they deal with the Southern Building Codes. Okay, it's a code. So I go to the code and I read the code. I go to zoning. I read their zoning requirements. I read their building requirements. So it's an information basis. I get that information so that now I can sit down with you and say, here we are. Here's our house plat that you've given to me. Or we've contracted with a surveyor to go out and get one because you don't have one because the house was built in 1857, doesn't have one. So now we have to have the property. We have the deed information, it's all written, but we don't have the physical plat. So now we go out to a surveyor, we get that, present it to me. I sit down with you and say, look, where would you like this nice little shed to go on your property? Do you want it next to your front door? Do you want it next to your kitchen door, your garage? What's the convenience factor? Do you want a connection between the two? Oh, we can do that. We're allowed to do that. We have to be set back a certain amount of distance. Is it going to be attached, detached, etc.? So that's how we start the process to understand what it is you're looking for. And as a side note, before you come to me, before you go to a builder, because a builder can basically do the same thing that I'm doing. He's going to guide you to a certain extent. He just wants to build it. He wants to have a set of plans to build it. I'm going to guide you through this with what I said in the previous segment with cost estimation as well as understanding materials and whatever else. You have to come to me with a program. A program is a scope of work. What is it that you want? Not my scope of work, the services, but what is it that you really want? Okay, so you want this little studio. The studio has to have a porch. It only needs to have one door going in, but you need to see the vista in the back because you have a beautiful view of the Massanutten Mountains or possibly the Blue Ridge Mountains. You want to have that. So that's part of our scope. That's part of our program. You want to be able to have a flat table that you can do your work, but you also want to have a small kitchenette. Oh, let's put in a small water closet with a vanity and a toilet in there. Well, my dog's going to be visiting. So now let's put something in there so we can wash the dog off when they go galloping through the cornfields and they get all muddy. So that's part of the program. Now we want it to match the existing house, which happens to be a craftsman style. But it was truly a craftsman style. Now it's got a little bit of shaker influence. So let's go in between the two. But Rich, I really like mid-century. So how can we incorporate that into it? So that's when we start doing the nuances. Then we start going through the building analysis and how we're going to construct this, as well as the cost analysis. Then we design it. We put it into a set of construction documents that have floor plans, elevations, what's it going to look like, building section cuts so we understand how the pieces are coming together, detailing, footer detailings, connection of beams, bolt detailing. Maybe you have certain types of cabinets that you want to do. So now we have millwork detailing. We have schedules for doors and windows and materials are placed into it. Then we have manufacturers' details that we place inside with their specifications. We take that whole packet, we just don't hand to a contractor for pricing. Now we actually have to go to the jurisdiction and say, Mr. Inspector, Mr. Reviewer, or Miss, excuse me, we would like to have you review this. So now it goes through a process. They go through zoning first to make sure you got your setbacks, which, are shown on my architectural site plan, shows the setback requirements and it shows any other easement requirements and calculations that are required for that. Then they say, well, okay, this is fine. Let's sign off on this. Now it goes to building. Building looks through it. They really don't care that you have a room with a bathroom. What they're looking for is the safety factor. How do we get out of this? Okay, you have the terminology is man door. We should call it a human door, but we call it a man door. So it's got a human door going out and it's got windows and that are safety because now we've got full length windows that need to be tempered in case a child leans up against it and pushes into it and breaks it or keeps it from breaking, keeps a child from breaking. We have those invested. Now we actually have the structural components are shown. We're showing how the foundation, how it's going to be supported, not by the foundation itself, but how does the earth, because the earth becomes a factor in this. Everything has what's known as a gravity load. It's supportive. If you think about your vehicle, the gravity load, the tires, the wheels are transferring the load to the earth, which absorbs the vehicle. If you're in sand, it's going to sink. So now you have to make bigger tires. The same thing with a house or a warehouse. The spread footings become bigger, or maybe it becomes what's known as a mat footing because we have soils that have more moss in it than what we would like and more liquidity to it. They check for those parameters. They don't really care, do you have it painted a certain color or it looks like it's craftsman or shaker or mid-century. They really don't care. They just want to know it fits their code parameters, which is the international code. They sign off on it. Now you have your permit, give it to your contractor, and they build it. Now that doesn't end my service to you. You might retain me and say, well, I want you to be involved in the construction. I want you to make sure that my contractor is following the construction documents because the construction documents is a legal tender between me and you. That's my legal tender to you. That's how my profession gives you my services and everything that's on it. The contractor has to build to those specifications. Now, there's certain things that are left out. Its means and methods are not on there. And there might be interpretations that the contractor needs to work through on how to do a certain detail. They may come back to me for a request for intent, an RFI, and I say, this is how we're going to do it in a narrative, or I give them a detail. They may have specifications that come back to me as a submittal. then maybe I have a certain type of roofing that I want to go on this because I've worked with you and I've worked with a metal manufacturer. Contractor comes back and says, that price point, I can get it at 75% that price point. Are you willing to go with this manufacturer? They give me the submittal. I review the specifications, say, yeah, it meets the requirements. Let's go with that. So the client, when I hand them a set of drawings, yes, we can just say, okay, here's your project and good luck to you. See you later. Bye. I don't like to do that. I want to make sure the project gets built what you and I worked on. It has nothing to do with my ego. It has nothing to do with me to say, here's my portfolio piece. We've worked on this project together. This is your project. This is what you want. So I'm here now as a safeguard to make sure the contractor follows the construction documentation as well as the construction agreement or the contract agreement that you and contractor A have gone into agreement with. So we continue with that service. So our services as an architect, there are broad services that we do from investigation all the way through construction administration, animation, rendering, to specifications, to marketing. I can create your marketing material. I do it all the time. Or maybe you have an interior designer that wants to come in. Okay, let me talk with them. Let me share my drawings with them so they have a real-time understanding of where they're placing their items. So that's how building your small little shed can get very complicated all of a sudden.
Right? Especially when you get to the part where you're sitting down with me, the homeowner, and my initial thought was, I just need 4 walls soundproofed that I can put a microphone and yeah, you can put a window in it. I guess that's fine too. Oh, wait, but that means I could also have room for a bed so that when the kid comes home, he doesn't have to stay in the house because he's allergic to the dogs and a bathroom. Oh my gosh, that would be, I could see where it could get a little out of
Yeah,
control.
and where do we go with the installation? Do we actually do studio installation? Do we do thick foam installation, injection? Do we put a Murphy bed in that has a desk attached to the other side of it? So when you lift up against the wall, now you got a desk, and then when you put it down, you got a bed. So yeah, you can continue on with this. At some point, we have to stop.
Right. That's where that whole initial
Yeah.
budget comes in.
It really it does. And then we have to do what's known as value engineering. So let's say we've already permitted our set of drawings. The county has signed off on it. You have a contractor on board. They've taken out to all of their subs, and now it comes in at 25% over your budget. I've worked with you with an understanding. You have to be very transparent with me with your budget. There's two budgets. There's the pre-construction budget, which not only deals with a designer, an architect, and the civil engineer and the site engineer that has to come out to do your property plat. It deals with the permitting cost, the upfront cost before you even go to construction. Now your contractor has come in and said, our budget is 25% over what has been allotted. You and I have worked hand in hand together. I know your float that you have, just like when you go shop for a car, that there might be a float of $10,000 either way. How can we get this down, Mr. Contractor, with inside a float value?
And
We
you also
really
know
have
from
to.
those conversations that something may not be as important to me.
Yeah,
It made it into the plan, but it's like, you know what? I don't
we can
really need
take
a
that out.
window.
Yeah, we can take that out. What about if we do some other arrangement? What if we do this? What if we do that? So that's called value engineering. It's done in commercial projects. It's done in every project that I've worked on except for one. And its budget was basically unlimited. They didn't have to worry about it.
That's the kind of project I want, is an
Yeah,
unlimited budget project.
yeah, it worked out for them. I recently, the past year and a half, I did the local Page County Emergency Center located in, it was used to be an IGA in Stanley, and it became a small little gathering space. It was an arcade. We didn't really do that much value engineering, but we did a plan modification because we realized as a whole team, myself working with Paige, we realized that initially the budget needed to be increased. We couldn't do that because we have a set allotment. So we modified it, brought it down to a certain workable factor, and it got constructed. And I know that they worked with the contractor hand in hand. We were not, my team was not retained for CA for that, but I know that that Page worked with the contractor because they've worked with the contractor before, so they did their own CA. But yes, you have to do value engineering, and it can get tough. It really can at times. It's a give or take. It really is. And it goes back to schematic design. It's a give or take. It's a give or take on understanding the property itself, what the property can support, your budget can support, and also the restrictions that are put in place by the jurisdictional requirements.
In my case, it would be what's the easiest for my husband to mow around because that would be the only thing that he
Mhm.
worries about. So, if something that we have said today has sparked interest in someone who's listening, how should they reach out to you? Where is the best first place to go to get in touch with you or learn more about some of your projects?
Well, you can go to my website. And also part of this transparency, I am an architect in multiple jurisdictions. I have multiple websites. I have multiple companies. I have Rich Hostelley Architecture LLC, which operates in the surrounding Northern Virginia, DC, Maryland areas, as well as in the Pennsylvania, North Carolina. That's how that LLC has been set up. I also have a PC, a professional corporation, same name, that operates very fluid throughout the United States. It's easier for commerce. And then I have a third one that is actually part of the chamber. It's actually Studio Hive Architecture that two of my friends and I started who aren't architects, but we're designers and we like working for ourselves and we like travel. So that becomes more international. Really, the easiest thing to do is to go to my website. The website is www.archrh.com. And it basically stands for RH ARC, which is Rich Hostelley Architecture. Again, archrh.com. So the easiest way, there's phone numbers on there for different areas from Virginia. I work in Bristol, Virginia, over into Tennessee, up into Northern Virginia, over into Maryland. So I have multiple numbers for that, phone numbers that people can reach out. My email is very easy. It's my first name at Hostelley Architect. So it's RICH at HOSTELLEYARCHITECT.com. So that's another way. I actually had a proposed client that emailed me that found me through the chamber and say, hey, we were just looking on. We see you're an architect local. Would you be interested in coming out and taking a look at our project? Absolutely. So those are
And
ways of
Gina,
doing it.
that's what you hope for. I mean, that we talk about that all the time about chamber membership, and you never know when it's going to come in handy, but it always does come in handy.
And that's how Paige found me. They had done a Google research of local architects in the surrounding area, and the fire marshal at the time actually called. I believe it might have talked to Gina and said, "Do you know any local architects?" And Gina said, "Yeah, Rich Hostelley." So he called me, and we were retained. And there is a process with that jurisdictional. They have to go through a bidding type of a proposal. So we did. We provided a proposal, and they liked us. And the fact that we were only 2 miles away from the project
Right.
helped.
Yeah,
Even
because as
though,
great as it is to
yeah,
be remote, there is still a contingent of your clients that are going to want to look you in the face and sit next to you at a kitchen table as you're talking about some of these things. So there is a perk.
there are, but I'm finding that that demographic is shifting. Most people that are my age, I'm in my mid 60s. Most people my age like the face to face. But I am finding that people that are typically younger don't mind this, that to a certain extent, it's part of our lives. And I hate to say it, COVID pushed it that way.
Oh, yeah.
My business partner and I pushed our clients that way because we had clients in Boston, we had clients in New York, Florida, over in Tennessee and California, and we decided we could save them a cost factor. Hey, we can have this 1 hour Zoom meeting instead of us getting on a plane. It's going to cost travel allotments. Would you be willing to do this? And they're like, oh, absolutely. So is it easier for us to be on site as the one-on-one? Yeah, it really is. But I find that 95% of my clientele do not require it. And as an architect, do I need to see the property? There's enough Google Earth information for me not to be on the property. I can send out a surveying team. I can go out myself. I recently have invested in the drones so I can do my own surveying wherever they're at.
Gina, do you think that my studio shed should have a place for someone to come record with me, or should it just be a one seater?
I think you should have both options because I would love to come see your she shed and hang out with you in person if I want that opportunity.
Yeah,
I will
it's going to
bring you
have to
some
have a
raw
wine
porch
cooler.
coffee.
Yes, it'll have to have a wine
And
cooler, a coffee maker, all of the things.
yes, you need to have the option.
Don't forget the refrigerator. You need to have all these things in your head. There's always options. When you go shopping for a car, you're only given a small list of options, and it becomes your personal car. Your house, go for it. Especially when you're talking to somebody, just go for it. I'd like to have this, I'd like to have that. It becomes a running list of a program, an initial program that at some point it's going to get smaller in scope because it has to.
Right.
It really does. Maybe your shed, you want to put in a cellar so you can go down and have wine, a wine cellar. Why not? But then the
He's
cost factor
costing me
comes
more
in.
and more money here,
I
Gina. He's
know.
giving me all these ideas.
And then maybe you put an observation deck so you can watch shooting stars.
See, it's perfect. My only real requirement, obviously, it's got to be soundproof so I can record a show. But the only other real requirement, and don't anybody out there at me over this, is that I do not want the dogs to be anywhere near it. I want one space in my house that is 100% dog free. And that's why I want this shed.
Yeah, they can sit on the porch. Just an interesting thing for you. We're talking a lot about architecture. Virginia has its own intimate architecture that people don't realize. If you think about a porch, there's a thing called a dog trot that was instituted by Americans here in Virginia, that you had a sleeping building, you had a kitchen building, and then a roof put over between that made a little bit of a porch. That's where the dogs were at and became what's known as a dog trot.
So, like a breezeway of
It's a
sorts.
breezeway. Yeah, that's all it is.
Get out.
So when I do homes that have that, that's part of my little thing is I'm like, hey, it's a dog trot.
I learned something new today.
I know, right?
Yeah, look, Google it. It'll probably come back with multiple things, but that's where it leads to for the
That
dogs.
is so cool.
Yeah.
So, Gina, what do you got going on in the next couple of weeks, chamber related?
So a couple of events, and you will find all of these events on our website at visitluraypage.com, or they're on our Facebook page, on our chamber Facebook page, or give us a call and sign up for any of them. But we have a chamber travel trip informational session. If you're interested in taking our chamber trip to Ireland on Tuesday, March the 24th from 11:30 to 1, if you're interested in going to Ireland and want to learn more about that trip, we are doing an informational session via Zoom, so you can do it in the comfort of your home and ask all the questions that you want to learn more about that trip that we are leaving in October, all inclusive. Also on Tuesday, March the 24th in the afternoon from 5:30 to 7, we are doing a women in business mixology class. Sorry, Rich, but tell your beautiful wife to come and participate. It's going to happen at Blue Shepherd Spirits. We are going to learn 5 different mixed drinks and get behind the bar and then get to taste them. You'll have some lovely hors d'oeuvres with that as well, and just have a great opportunity to fellowship with some other ladies in the community and just have a great time there at Blue Shepherds learning how to make some drinks. On March the 25th, on Wednesday from 11:30 to 1, we have a lunch and learn with People Inc. It is going to be accessing capital for startups for small businesses, and that is with People Inc. with Leslie Curley. So please sign up for that if you're interested in learning more about that. Business After Hours is at Shinpeiko Industries. That is on Thursday, March the 26th. They are recognizing the National Disabilities Awareness Month. So that is a great opportunity to come out and get a tour of Shinpeiko. They are a great asset to our community here in Page County. Those are our events for the month of March.
And I have to say, another perk to being a chamber member, I met Ingrid because she came to one of the social media classes that I had done for you at the chamber, and she was just a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago. So it all
She
comes full
was.
circle.
It does. Yes.
So visit LurayPage.com, can get them all the details they need for all of the things.
That is correct. Or shoot me an email at events@luraypage.com to sign up for these, or give us a call at 540-743-3915. And you can sign up for any of these events. We can add you to their email blast. We send out an email every Monday called In the Loop, as well as we also send out regular emails throughout the week about each individual event to keep you, but not just our events, all chamber member events that are in the community that are happening to keep you abreast of everything that is happening in the community.
Rich, thank you for educating me on all things architecture today. This was a fascinating conversation.
It was fun. Thank you so much. And thank you, Gina, for asking me to do this.
Absolutely. Thank you for being our guest.
You're welcome.
I will be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of The Valley Today, a few minutes after noon, so meet me here then.